But when you go through life, when you actually go through the nitty gritty of life, whether it be business successes, business failures, addiction, family problems, death, loss, it's messy. Life is messy. And I think as soon as you acknowledge the mess, you can help clean the mess or you can help manage the mess. But as long as you ignore the mess is just going to sit there and stare at you.
Before we dive in, let me tell you about the book that started a podcasting revolution, Make Every Podcast Want You. It is not just a bestseller, it is a 2-time gold medalist, baby. This book is your ultimate guide to landing dream podcast interviews, building authority authentically, and making your voice the one they remember. If you've got a message and a mission, this is your mic drop moment. Grab your copy today in the link below and step into the spotlight that you were born for.
Welcome to the Communication Queens podcast for the visionary leaders, speakers, service providers, and podcasters who are looking to stand out sharing their story. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, former screenwriter turned master communications coach. On this podcast, I'll be coaching you on how to share your own transformation story so that you increase your visibility, influence, and income on podcast interviews. Let's get your voice heard. Ryan, what brought you to the level of uncensorship that you embrace today?
Anxiety. I really got to say it's anxiety. You run around the world and you're anxious and I was just a scared little crybaby kid. But when I learned the power of not giving a shit and knowing that if somebody doesn't like you, there's just many people out there that will like you. I mean, Richard Ramirez had a wife. So, I mean, not everybody's going to hate you. So if you find your authentic you, you be your authentic you. And whether you like to curse a lot or whether it's you're a nice person or whether you do whatever, that authentic you. And so being uncensored is the authentic me. I don't pull punches and I just say what I want. And you like me and that's great and I have a friend, or you don't like me and that's great and I have a conversations. That's how I busted out of that anxiety loop of just being authentically me.
That's so interesting, the fact that it correlated to anxiety, because I'm thinking now through like my Rolodex of having coached leaders for 9 years in my coaching business. And I'm like, one of the big problems that I saw so many people struggle with was their own embracing their authenticity. And the anxiety that comes with leadership and this perception of like the shoulds of all the shoulds of life of how they should be doing it. And I'm like, yeah, I think that as they started to strip away from all the shoulds through our work together, suddenly they were becoming more uncensored, but it didn't necessarily mean that they were going out and like cursing out their employees or anything like that.
No.
But they were being more raw and real about like the pros and the cons, the successes and the failures.
1,000,000%, because, and especially with social media in the era that we grew up in, I mean, I'm Gen X, but we still heavy on social media and heavy on that stuff.
Yeah, you all like Facebook.
We do. I love them. Like I was sitting here, I was filling out your form of like putting in all my links. I'm like, well, on Instagram, I got 8 followers. Here's TikTok, I got 12. Here's LinkedIn, I got like 4,000. Here's Facebook, I got 15,000. Here you go. Like, yeah, I'm digging the Facebook, right? But we see TV was good about it too, of showing us this powder puff what life is going to be like back in the 50s, Ozzy inherited I Love Lucy and all of those things. And we keep getting these things. But when you go through life, when you actually go through the nitty gritty of life, whether it be business successes, business failures, addiction, family problems, death, loss, it's messy. Life is messy. And I think as soon as you acknowledge the mess, you can help clean the mess or you can help manage the mess. But as long as you ignore the mess is just going to sit there and stare at you.
If you're listening to this interview thinking, I want to do that, I want to be on more podcasts, I want to share my brilliance with the world, then I have got the service for you. It is called Podmatch. Think of it like Bumble, but for podcasting. This AI-powered platform matches you with the right podcast host so you can pitch less and get booked more. I've used it to land aligned interviews that amplified my voice and built my brand. It is literally one of the few services I recommend in my best-selling award-winning Make Every Podcast Want You. Sign up now at podmatch.com in the link below.
So it's as you go into life, just acknowledge it. Be like, yeah, that was really fucked up and that shouldn't happen again. And let's do something different. Or, hey, that was really bad, but I did learn some things out of that horrible thing I just happened to be a part of. But and you just acknowledge the mess. You acknowledge the mess, you trudge through and you grow. Not every day is guaranteed, but as long as you're here, shit's guaranteed to happen while you're here. So you're just going to have to learn how to deal with the messiness of it.
When was a time and how did you feel when you were coddling and catering to other people's expectations? And what is the difference between doing your job, like being able to do your job well and
Yeah.
fulfill a role, versus coddling and living into somebody else's shoulds?
Marketing's really good for that. I was director of marketing at a huge company for a long time, and we would have these big clients in, and they would come in and they would go, "This is what we want for marketing." And we were just kind of, when we work for corporate, okay, cool, we'll produce whatever you tell us to, whether it'll work, whether it's stupid, whether it's good, whatever. And a lot of people in marketing, clients especially, will come in and like, "Hey, I want to do this." And you're like, "Okay, but you're going to have to do it like this for it to get in your reach." "No, you don't know what you're talking about. Then why are you hiring me?" So in marketing, especially rookie marketers first, and I did the same thing, is that you're just happy to be in the game. So if you have a client and they're like, "I want to do this thing," you're like, "Good, let's do it." You're just happy to be getting paid. So you'll do whatever bad idea they tell you to do. You'll produce whatever bad video they tell you to do. You'll produce whatever bad ad campaign they'll tell you to do. And then you don't get results, then you get fired, and then you get all of these things. And then they go on to find another entry-level marketer and they do the same thing with them. They're not successful. You're not successful. So when you coddle that, if you're really going to be an expert, you have to have that confidence in your gut that you're going to stand up to your client in a good way. You don't, yell at them, but in a good way and say, "Hey, look, I like your idea of doing X, but it needs to be presented Y." And you have to be able to explain that, not coddle them, because you can take their money. You can take their money. You can go buy a pool. You can go do whatever you want with it. But at the end of the day, you're going to lose that client and you're going to damage your reputation because you did not have success with that client. You got paid from that client. So coddling clients in marketing, coddling clients when you are an expert in a field supposed to be helping them, I fell into that trap. I probably owe a bunch of people from my first 3 years of marketing money because I just did whatever they asked me and couldn't get them the thing that they were wanting. But I thought I was treating my client, because you were taught you be nice to them, be good to them, do what they ask you to do. No, you're the expert. You lead them where they need to go.
Yeah, I see that so often with newbie coaches as well when they're just starting out and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm holding space." And I'm like, "Yeah." And like your clients are kind of paying you to challenge their perspectives. If you're holding space for their current perspective, that's as far as they're going to grow. They're not actually going to grow beyond that space. And I like to frame it as like how a doctor prescribes what a doctor prescribes. And like they're not apologizing for it, but they're gonna be like, "Okay, you have this, this, and this, and this symptom. Here's the thing that's gonna help you." And versus the patient walking and going, "I have this, and this symptom. Like, I think I need this thing. I
Right.
think I need to have," like, it reminds me of that scene in Girls Five Ever when this woman goes in and she's like, "I think I need a blood test because I think this could be this like thing that I've
Yeah.
Googled." And he's like, "That's not it. You're just stressed." Like, but if I do a blood test, will you get out of my office?
But yeah, so here's what happens. I'm going to use your analogy too. When you placate, to kind of turn it back around, I remember the doctor that I had until I was 32 years old was the same doctor that pulled me from my mother. So at 33 years old, he's getting ready to retire, right? And he doesn't care. And he would placate. I would come in and say, "Hey, I need this pill." And he'd just give it to me. "Hey, I need this pill." He'd just give it to me. Hey, yeah. That's how you get a drug addiction. That's how you get hooked on things. That's how you get damage from taking different medications that you don't want to do, because that doctor placated me because he just didn't care. He's like, here you go. Here you go. Oh, you need more Xanax. You need more this. You need more that. Well, whatever, man. Whatever gets you out of my office.
That's definitely how you get a drug addict. That's
Right.
how they got my
Right.
dad.
But what you're saying is that doctor placated me. He gave me what I wanted to my detriment and damage.
Yeah, instead of what you needed.
Yes.
And it's really looking at what is the need. And so what is the need for full authenticity in marketing?
I think one of my favorite sayings is, if you're ever lost in the woods, the first thing you have to do is find out where you are so you can find your way out. And full authenticity is that. It's where you are. If a client comes to me, I don't know how many times in marketing a client came to me and sat down and, "Here's my last $500, save my company." And I'm like, "Take that $500. Go take you and your husband out to the last nice dinner you're going to have for a while, because your company's going to shut down. And that's what I'm going to do. Go play the lottery with it. These are all things that were going to be better than giving it to me. Full authenticity means if it's a bad idea, you take it. Or if it's a bad idea, you call it out. If it's a bad client, you help that client be better at that they're doing. Whenever it comes to a doctor, a lawyer, a marketer, all these high-level experts or whatever, you're there to navigate them through a space that they're not familiar with. It's the same thing as if I dropped you in Boingo Boingo in the jungle and gave you a navigator and you're like, hey, let's go this way. You're like, cool, there's tigers there, but let's go. Like it's the same thing. You're there to navigate people through this space. And if you're not fully authentic, you're going to lead them to the tigers. You're going to lead them to the bad place, or you're going to lead them wherever. You have to be authentic with them so that, one, they can trust you, and two, you can use your expertise to go where you're going. Now, that caveat, are there bad, shitty marketers out there that lead you wrong no matter what and take your money? Absolutely, all the time. But the full on authenticity that comes in from me and what I do is you don't have to wonder why this works, how this works, if it doesn't work, or whatever. We put those things on the table, and I might advise going against the Tiger Way and give you all the information. If you still pick to go the Tiger Way, it's like, all right, but you go first, right? It's you have that rapport with that authenticity, so you know how to deal with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that I see that with so many other industries and models of care, just entering into the midwifery zone again, not,
Mhm.
I'm going to be a midwife, but just with
Yeah.
midwives, like they are like, here's all the options. And then
Yes.
here's, your path as far as how you want to travel. These are the best ways to travel. And so it's this constant back and forth of a dialogue, but it doesn't happen without information.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things that I love about podcasting is it does provide information, but there are some like there are some pieces of information that like people can Google, right?
Mhm.
Like I was just having a conversation with several naturopathic doctors at our podcasting party about the power of a perspective shift versus go, Google 15 supplements that can help, reduce your hair loss. Because when you're able to provide that perspective shift from that authentic
Mhm.
place and also from that place of experience, that's when you're able to deliver something that's of greater value. But how do you frame that and how do you sell that? Like when you're going on, when you're, doing what you do and
Mhm.
building people's shows for them.
Yeah. Well, to the hair loss thing, Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, is bald. No hair loss thing works. Period. So, I mean, that's how you present it. You look at logic, you look at evidence, you look at facts, and you're like, here it is. I'm not making this up. I'm not doing this. We use tested driven things to get there. I mean, I've been podcasting forever, since 2010, but our company's new. It's only a couple years old. And we use all the things and we look at every single aspect of podcasting. What is a podcast? How does it do? How does it go? How does it do? What does your industry do? What I tell people when we build podcasts from an idea up, same thing as a marketing plan. We go find your audience and we build it around your audience. That's 1,000 thing that we do. If you're building a podcast from the ground up, go find your audience and build them a podcast using your expertise. Build them a podcast. That's how you sell it. That's how you do it, because you're being authentic. Isn't the whole point? If you're putting time, money, effort, energy into podcasting in a professional sense and manner, I'm doing this for my business. I'm doing this for lead generation. I'm doing this for whatever. You need a return on that.
Mm-hmm.
100%. So we start building you a podcast with a return built in from day one. And that is, you go find your audience. You go find your audience. Then we figure everything else after that.
Yeah. I think that that's the biggest thing that people mistake when they start either guesting or
Mm-hmm.
building their own podcast, because I think a lot of times it comes from this egoic desire of like I
Yes.
just feel like I'm going to start a podcast, and it's like, yeah, your voice deserves to be heard, but who's listening? Like I've
Right.
coached a lot of podcasters where they were disheartened at the amount of downloads that they were getting a year in, and it's nothing toward them. They were doing all the technically right things, but they were missing out on guesting. But the audience that they were cultivating, they really needed to double down. So how do you know what is the right audience for your business?
When it comes to podcasting, that specific question, it depends on what your goal with your podcast is. That's really the next step. We pick an audience, or pick a goal, pick an audience. They're kind of the same level. Our company was built off of, I hired like 4 people to run podcasts, and we took anybody on them set, pitch podcast services, did whatever. Those shows probably in collective, out of the 300 shows we did for that run or whatever, collectively probably had 8 downloads. But our company was built on that because our goal was the guest, not the viewer. So it was about building those relationships with the people we were on the show with, on that show. So that was a success. Never like horrible view, horrible ratings, whatever. But we became a success. We still have clients from that phase of our company. It's actually, what's your goal? If your goal is to have 1 million subscribers and downloads, be famous before you start a podcast. Because other than that, I don't really know how to tell you to get those. The next one is, if you want to go, 2 things. 1, organic podcast listener growth is slow. Is just absolutely slow. We're talking 10 to 15 downloads a week if you're doing good. That's a good metric when you start a podcast, 10 to 15 downloads a week. And then by the year end, you add percentages to that. So your second, third year in, you're rolling even more. Lucky people get more. You'll have a good show that peaks. You'll have this, and you're trying to find that pop off, right? The other thing is money cures everything. There's several companies out there that you can plug your podcast in and hand them 5 to 6 figures, and then have a top 2 rated podcast the next week. That's the magic bullet.
You touch on something that you and I are so in cahoots with. Of the power of the relationship is like, many people treat the podcast as like this thing that's going to make them famous, and suddenly, like, within 6 months of having one, why am I not Rachel Hollis or Joe Rogan? I'm like, well, they've been doing this a while. That dang piece of toasters are just a little crumb. It was a poor choice. But secondly, like, you touched on the relationship, and like this is how we get, like, our clients get referral business before podcast episodes even distribute, because we're strategically placing them on the right podcasts that build the relationship. How many of your clients actually get that about the relationship?
All of them, because it's part of our process. It is 100%. The way that we build and work with people is, 1, we see their ideas, and we have that. What are your expectations of your podcast? I want 1 million followers. Well, we're not the company for you then. Or we will absolutely act as a go-between between you and the other companies out there that we can do that we can just hand them money. We'll still produce, edit, and do the show or whatever. But we have that expectation. What is the expectation of your podcast in 6 months? What do you expect from this? So we know how to serve you. And we have those talks. We have those set downs and come to Jesus meetings or whatever about what they should expect and what they're going for. Because a podcast built for the guest and a podcast built for the viewer are built 2 different ways. A podcast built for let's disseminate information as a single podcast and let's have guests are built in a different way. They're marketed a different way. So like I said, this process starts from day 1. It's not just, hey, I want a podcast, I'm going to throw some shit together. We build them in a very structured manner.
When you're structuring a podcast for the guest, and that's to build a relationship with the guest ideally, and to grow your business via relationship, what are the things that you look for in the structuring of that podcast in order to fulfill on creating a valuable relationship of mutual exchange?
2 things, and it starts from the pre-interview. We say, hey, the pre-interview process. There's a lot of podcast hosts. If any of you guys out there guest a lot, some of them do pre-interviews, some of them do forums, some of them do whatever. We always build that process to kind of get to know your person, and we try to get that as face-to-face as possible. We understand there's a lot of forms involved, but that face-to-face before anything happens, we try to get that done. We suggest either a face-to-face 10-minute meeting just to make sure that we're good, make sure that we're whatever. And then the day of the recording, so our podcast, we recommend about 30 minutes, between 20, 30 minutes, a good solid drive or whatever, but block that whole hour out. Make sure that guest blocks that whole hour out. You get there and you be on time, get there, and then you have 15, 20 minutes with that guest that you can just sit there and talk and learn and vibe and get that conversation started. Then you hit the record button and you do the podcast. Now you stick to your 30 minutes. You have another 15 minutes to talk and de-escalate and see how things go. And that is the moment that you say, hey, let's book another call. Hey, let's do this. Hey, can we book a call to talk more about the things we talked about? That's where you build it. And it's built that way. And then if you have a good production team, I know one, is that what you do is you go and you break up the clips, you produce the podcast, and before it ever airs, a couple weeks, send all of that packet to that guest. And say, hey, man, great show. We pulled some stuff. Here's the full, here's the clips, here's the everything. I appreciate if you don't release it until we release, but we wanted to give you and your marketing team some time with your things so you can use the content you created with us. You notice I never mentioned a viewer. I never mentioned a distribution. That's how we treat the guest. If you are really wanting to focus your podcast on the guest, that's how you treat the guest. You don't let that relationship die, and you treat them as a human being and as they're important, and you grow that relationship from day one. And if you do a podcast a week, that's 50, let's be realistic, 48 to 50 a year, because you're going to take time off or miss a couple. And let's say that even 50% of those pan out as relationships, which is a good number. You just made 25 new business contacts that year. How much is that worth to you?
Such a powerful perspective shift from the way that most people
Mhm.
just throw spaghetti at a wall and
Right.
hope that a podcast brings them instant fame and massive amounts of downloads and customers that suddenly flow into their business.
Right. No, and on those type of podcasts too, when you structure those, because you're not really cranking out to the viewer, right? So what you do is you go to YouTube or Vimeo, whatever it's called, TikTok, and you release this stuff, and then you put it in email blasts, you put it in text blasts, you put it in newsletters, you distribute it this way, because you're not like, hey, I'm going to see how many likes and clicks I get on Facebook, YouTube, or whatever. You're taking that person and using them as an expert as well. And you always highlight and tag back to them to do the same thing. You treat that person like the expert they were on your show, and you're posting this and you're cultivating some decent amount of views, you hope, but you're still really just building that relationship with that new friend you made. And because if I said, hey, Kimberly, let's go set, and you can listen, and I'll buy your lunch, and you can listen to me for 45 minutes talk about podcast production and what I can do for you, you're going to be like, no, thanks. I got toast to eat. But if I say, hey, Kimberly, you are an expert in your field. I love how you talk about podcasting. Would you please give me an hour of your time to come on my podcast and talk to me? You guys are still going to have the same conversation. We're still going to talk about the same thing. You're just more apt and more open to sit down and have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Because there's reciprocity involved, and then
Yes.
there's visibility. I mean, as a
Mhm.
CEO, I tell all my coaching clients to like look at things three ways. How can you leverage one thing three ways in marketing, in anything?
Yes.
So for a podcast, you can leverage it from, it's the interaction, it's the relationship that you build with the guest or the podcast host. It's the social media deliverables that suddenly now you have all your content done
Mhm.
for the rest of the week. And then it's, you can embed it into email sequences, marketing funnels, etc., to provide that social proof for that next program or thing
Right.
that you're launching. So there's so many benefits to doing it. And I love the strategy in which you approach it and building it for the guest. If you're building it for the viewer, how often do
Yes.
you do that for your clients? Or is it mostly building it for the guest?
No, we build for viewer too. That's a different one. And a lot of them are actually kind of in the middle, right? A lot of them, we don't necessarily build strictly for the guest or strictly for the viewer. We have classes and talks about how to do both. And then it's kind of up to the host. If you are building for the viewer, that's a much longer game to find a result. So I used to be a stand-up comedian. I toured, and that spends a lot of time in the mirror, talking, working things out, making sure you engage an audience, making sure you do that. If you look at Howard Stern, Joe Rogan, Mark Segura, all these other people, Theo Vaughn, all these people that have these, they are stage performers. They know how to entertain an audience. They know how to keep an audience engaged. They know how to
Mhm.
do all these things before they ever buy a microphone and sit down like we are. They know how to do this. And that is number one in making a podcast for the viewers. You're going to have to get rid of your ego and understand how to captivate an audience. What are you going to do? How are you going to captivate that audience? How are you going to be an expert? How are you going to structure your show with all the little marketing things out there that TV producers and all the things have to do? Is attention span 4 to 6 seconds. You need to change. You need a graphic here. You need to punch it up. You need to write everything before you walk on there. You need to have high level guests. You need to do this. It's a different build. It's an absolutely different build. And what happens, and here's the downfall for most people, and if I piss you off, it just means I'm right, is that you think that you made 3 of your friends laugh and you're going to get a microphone and you're going to get a podcast and you're going to make bank and you're going to get a sponsorship. And within 6 months, you're going to be right next to Spotify with Joe Rogan. And if you think that way, just stop now. Not stop podcasting, just stop thinking that way. When I was a stand-up comedian, I did open mics for 3 years. I did touring for 2.5 years. I did podcasting for a year after that. Then I got a break. Then I felt like
Mhm.
I could do something that I could do. It took years. So if you think that you're sitting at your lawyer's office or your doctor's office, or you're having a cute little conversation with your girlfriend and you think, oh, we should have this podcast, you're on the right track to start. But you are years away from the finished product and being able to captivate that audience and do all of those production things that goes into that. Now, social media has taught us that we can get a viral video and be famous forever. So everybody's out there for that viral content. Well, you lose the authenticity that we talked about in the beginning. It is work. It is absolutely work. Eddie Murphy walks on stage and does what he does, or Dave Chappelle, and makes it look effortless because he put hours, hundreds of hours into work before he ever took that stage. That's the same thing with creating a podcast for viewers. You just have to commit to the bit.
Preach, because I think that having been in musical theater and done theater for most of my early adult life, the hardest part is building the audience. Like,
Yeah.
you can build the stage. I shared in my book the story of when I was a dancing squid in a new musical, which I was shocked. How come people don't want to buy tickets to this brand new musical about
Did you say dancing
squids?
squid? That's not a sentence I thought I would hear today. I just wanted to double check that.
I like to throw curveballs,
Yeah,
fart
no.
book, dancing squid.
That's
We
right.
keep it full of surprises here. And sometimes at that show, there were 2 people in the audience of
Yeah.
20 that it would fit.
Yeah.
That's the way of it. And yet still, as a performer, you still perform that
Oh,
bit
yeah.
as if you're at a freaking Taylor Swift concert.
I remember one of my very first bookings, and you got to remember this 20 years ago, one of my very first bookings when I was out trying to do the stand-up thing. I got on this tour and I was so happy. I'm on a tour. Look at this. It was literally 4 soulless comedians in a car that went to these Midwest nothing states. And we were at like little hotels and little bars and little things, right? And people that didn't normally have comedy. So you did not have a built-in audience. And I remember we rolled in one night. It was some Ramada Inn, I think in Des Moines, Iowa, somewhere in the Iowa area, right? And we walk in there and there's 4 people in there. One was too drunk to even give a shit because it was just a hotel bar. And 2 people were on a date and just pissed off we were talking. And the other dude, I'm pretty sure he's getting himself a handy under the table. So it was just not a good experience. And we all went up, we got paid regardless, right? So we just went up there and did it. But man, those are demeaning shows. And I can understand, let's tie this back into podcasting. It's demeaning to you, to your soul, that you go in there and you spend all this time, effort, money, energy to do this podcast. And you're like, oh, I got 6 downloads. It's the same feeling, but you just have to push through that. But you have to lower your expectations, right? I'm on tour. No, whatever, dude. Whatever. You just have to understand, cool. Well, if I have 7 next week, then I've upped my audience by 20%.
And I think that's the thing that performers understand, that
Yeah.
I see a lot of people in the entrepreneur space, which I think a lot of coaches have shifted from being wanting to be in Hollywood to being coaches. And in that space, I see a lot of people like they're doing these things and I'm constantly, as a business owner, I'm like, well, what's the ROI? Like, did you get paid for it? And if you didn't get paid for it, are you generating an ROI from it?
Yeah.
Because if not, like that's why I saw in Hollywood constantly people going broke and having to wait tables and having side jobs because they were doing all these things for copy and credit and things like that. It's building brand awareness about who. No, it's not. I mean, it's attracting a small crowd, but sometimes like it just depends on the strategy and is it generating that ROI? So what I learned having been in Hollywood, like that the ROI comes from relationships. And it seems like you stumbled on the same
So hear me out. This may take a second. Why me and you are sitting here talking? And I will do this as quick as I possibly can. Let's go back to 2016, had a podcast. It imploded because it was with the crew. I was living off of that. I decided to change my life because I was kind of an asshole and it just didn't have a whole lot of direction. So, but through the podcast, I started doing graphic design that got me into marketing. A little local radio station hired me to do middays, and I was trying to work that out. Then I could not afford just to work at the radio station. So I got a second job at a rent-to-own place. I was repossessing refrigerators from grandmothers and shit like that. It was awful. I made it to district manager. They moved me to Springfield. COVID hit. I couldn't do anything because nobody had a marketing budget. Because I'm still trying to open my own marketing company and do this, just secondary job. I moved to Springfield. No, it didn't happen. So I was dating a girl and she sold insurance. She got me into insurance, which is a horrible business to be in. During COVID, I had to go to stupid networking groups. I went to a networking group. It was all about women. I did not like my job. I did not like the relationship, and I did not like the lady sitting across from me. And she goes, hey, we have this wine thing going on Sunday. Boys can't come. And I'm like, great. We'll just drink beer. That stupid Futurama line. Cool. I'll create my own network group with blackjack and hookers. 2 dudes over here laughed at it. two dudes over here left it. I'm like, you're my guys. I had a membership to a speakeasy in Springfield, Missouri. We went there and drank all day. We decided to come up with a networking group. We named it Cigars and Scotch. We started Cigars and Scotch. From Cigars and Scotch, one of the dudes I started Cigars and Scotch, which was named AJ Willoughby. AJ Willoughby was vice president of Titan Media or Titan Digital. He hired me on the spot to come work at the marketing company in sales. I sucked at sales, but I kept pushing on the creative thing. Within 2 years, I was director of marketing. After I became director of marketing that company, I decided I didn't want to do that. Me and the CEO of that company made this company. Right. That's a lot.
Relationships.
You find somebody and you go and you find another thing and you go and you find another. I mean, this is over the span of like 10 years. So, but you find a span and you go and you find a span and you go. And your successes and your failures and what you have to do to get by and all these other things. But you just keep making those upper level relationships and it leads you right to where you are. Every one of those relationships I made in insurance and marketing and this guy and making a joke here and making that has led me to being successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing because when I think about it, like the film that I got produced and distributed, my first feature, it took me 3 years of networking in groups and going to film events and things like that to get that screenplay, which then allowed me to meet my husband, which then also opened the door to me realizing that was not really fully my dream to then becoming president of an e-com company. Like the sequence, like it looks together in hindsight, but when you're in it, like how do you navigate being present in the relationships when there's so many relationships to be had? How do you discern which are the ones that are going to be the most valuable for your time and for your soul?
I don't think you do. I think you get lucky. And I'm going to explain that. I don't know how many relationships I probably burnt or could have nurtured and ended up on a totally different path. I think we can look backwards and go, I made good decisions. I made good decisions because I didn't tell AJ to go himself like the first night. Right? Cool. Which is a me thing to do. Right. But I could have met somebody else and went another way. And I think that you develop the relationships. On the other side of that, I think you selfishly develop the relationships that help you the most and whatever level that is on. I'm sure you going in Hollywood, you've had jobs you weren't proud of or didn't want to do or didn't. And you're just, but you self-identify, right? You self-identify, I'm an actress, I'm a performer, and that's what I'm going to do. Whether you're waiting tables, whether you're scraping gum off of a theater, whatever, you're still an actress, right? You're still a performer. So you meet people, you're identifying and developing relationships as that identity, not the gum scraper or not the rent to own or not the whatever. So you're selfishly developing the relationships that make it work for you.
I always develop better relationships when I introduce myself as a writer instead of an actor.
Right. Right.
And looking at the relationship development, when you're in business, there are relationships that we get intimidated, especially as women. I don't think I'm intimidating. I don't. But some people apparently do. And there is, I see it more with women, less than men. Have there ever been relationships where that's a really big person to be connected with? And have you ever had that intimidation?
Yes. And this might need a therapist call, but those are the ones that I almost have to fight myself not to blow up. It's weird because it is intimidating. And I don't like feeling like that. I don't like feeling smaller, lesser, intimidated or whatever. And I've noticed like you try too hard or you push too hard or you're awkward or you do whatever. But I've noticed that those are the ones where I usually, back in the day when I was younger, I would screw up. But today that I just go, hey, and I'm just straight up. I'm like, hey, I'm a little intimidated by you because XYZ. And I just get it off the table and they either go, oh, cool. Let's go do something and get rid of that intimidation or whatever. I just started acknowledging it. And like one of my clients, and if they ever see this, hi, they're in Nashville, Tennessee. Their house is an old recording studio. They're on Music Row. I helped set up their and you're in this like multi-million-dollar house doing whatever. I'm working for them and we're just bullshitting and they're taking my advice and we're doing whatever. And I remember walking out of there and my ass is all sweaty and I'm just like, oh, that could be something or it could be nothing. But I don't like those, but I know they're necessary. Like at all. It just makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is definitely sitting in discomfort. I mean, there's definitely been rooms that I've walked in where I'm like, why did I get an invite? Like where I'm pretty amazed, but at the same time, and I completely agree with the self-sabotage identification of like because there is a fear, especially when you jump so far beyond your comfort zone of the people that you're used to associating with,
Mhm.
where suddenly it's like, oh, this person's really big, important, influential, has a lot of context, could do a lot for me, for my business, for growth, for whatever. But that I love your ability to just call it out and really be honest and unfiltered and uncensored with the fact that, like, hey, this is really happening, and I feel this toward you, and are we cool?
Yeah. Well, and on the same vein, Hollywood might be a little different, but I think in business, you had brought up the word ego, well, a little bit
Yes.
ago. I've been trying not to curse as much as I usually, but it's awful, especially in the podcast industry, in the Hollywood industry, and my God, in the business industry, it's about as bad as you can get. And I think that's it. I think when you find people that where your egos don't bump into each other, because I have
Mm-hmm.
one, you have one, we all have one. That's it, right? But I think when you find those people that your egos don't bump into each other, I think that helps a lot. That you can get out of that way, because there's people that are intimidating. They know they're intimidating. They know they can call the shots. They know people look up to them, and they use that shit to make you feel smaller, or they use that shit to manipulate you. At the same time, you're really trying to manipulate them to get you to do, all that bullshit. But and sometimes in relationships, it just doesn't click. Right. As
Mm-hmm.
much as they intimidate you or you intimidate them, there's that never meet your heroes thing and all this other stuff. The whole business of relationships is just weird because sometimes there's a special sauce. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes you have to work at it. Sometimes you don't. And sometimes you just end up being really good friends and really good connections with people. And you can't put a finger on, oh, I did this or played my cards right. It's just kind of like, hey, we like each other. Let's do it. Like little kids, like, well, we're both wearing green. Let's be friends. And sometimes that just happens too.
Yeah, yeah. I think the business of relationship building it's got so many beautiful complexities because humans are
Mhm.
beautifully complex,
Yeah.
and I completely agree with the industry, the egos that come with business and with people, because they're on the how do you navigate a desire to serve and a desire to serve an audience,
Yes.
but also the validation that does come from putting yourself out there, having that voice. How do you navigate the dichotomy?
It's a lot of tampering down. I know that from, there's a certain amount of ego that, hey, I got up on stage and talked about this and did this or whatever. And you get a microphone, you get a little bit of success or whatever. I think that's where you have a reference, you're a hero or somebody you go back to, which mine is always, for my life, and will always be George Carlin. That is just it, right? Is that the authenticity? You're honest. You do it. If you have somebody doing it too egotistical, call them out. If you're being egotistical, be able to call yourself out. And you
Mm.
have to be an expert without being a dick. And sometimes that is hard,
It
right?
really is, especially for so many people going on podcasts, because you're
Yeah.
literally getting invited on as an expert. And there's a level of humility, and like where I see people who stumble and who foible with podcasts, or when I talk to podcasters and they're like, "Oh, that interview was just horrible." It's when they get stuck at a level of emotional, an emotional frequency of pride
Yes.
versus actually tipping into courage and being brave.
And I think another thing is people use a lot, just kind of a soft language, right? Because when I coach people, I produce a local morning show here. It's live. It's like almost like a network's local morning show. We do it. It's great. So I'm cutting promos with the host, and she's in here, and she's like, "So if you want to come join," and I'm like, "No, get rid of that soft language shit. Drop that now. Say, hey, when you come to the show, when you join, when you do this, when you do that." That's kind of my weird medium. Is you use positive language of, hey, when you come sign up for the Chamber of Commerce, this is what I want not, hey, if you're interested, if you want to, if, right?
Mhm.
That's my generalized, and I'm going to tell you this, that's my generalized switch. If you're an expert, go on there and be a expert, right? You don't have to demean people. You don't have to talk down to people, but you don't have to go, in a lot of cases, this works for people. It maybe if you try this, maybe no, like, hey, look, in my life, this is what I've done. I went from A to B and this is how I did it. Here's my advice to you. Take it or get rid of it. I don't care. This is what it is. Right.
Mm.
And that is my bridge between that ego and that whatever. I'm talking about experience. I was there. I watched it happen. And we're going to talk about that. I'm not overinflating it. I'm not beating you up with it, but we are saying, hey, look, in my experience, if you just put your head down and you work and you commit and you pay attention to this and you do this and you balance this, this happens. That's my expert advice. Take it or don't take it. It's really not up to me anymore. I'm not going to if and when and if you do this and maybe do this. We're just going to be direct. We're going to talk about an experience. And now that's your information to do with what you will. That's kind of how I try to stay between that. Not like, oh, I'm so good and great because I do this and everything I touch turns to gold. No, shut up. Go away.
Yeah, I think what I love about that is it's explicit language rather
Yeah.
than implicit. And I think
Yes.
so many people struggle with implicit language, and especially the people pleasers of the world who are like, "Would you like to come on my podcast? Are you inviting me?" Instead of, "I would like you to come on my podcast.
Yeah.
Let's do a podcast
Yeah.
swap." No? Cool? Okay. Next.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
No, one of the things I was talking to Neil, because me and you were talking about doing some business or whatever, and I
Yeah.
said something about trade. Immediately you went, not interested. And I went, cool, and just moved on. Like it's not a whatever. We knew where we were at. We're being authentic. We're feeling each other at. I didn't go home and lose sleep over it. I didn't whatever. It's okay. That person said something, set a boundary. I moved on. Life went on. And that's what it, like you said, that sort of language is, here you go. Now people have to deal with me. Yeah. You set those boundaries, you hold those boundaries. And when we're talking about being an expert on a podcast, set those boundaries. I have the microphone. I have the voice. When you're on my podcast, I'm the expert. When I'm on your podcast, you're the expert. I have the microphone. I have the voice. And you have a choice whether to listen to that or not. But what I'm not going to do is make a choice if I'm an expert or not.
When did you get so confident?
About 3:30 when I smoked. Never mind. No, it's just a matter of here it is. That phrase, now you got to deal with me, right? Is that in life, people pleasers and what? They're like, I got to deal with him and I got to deal with this. No. You got to deal with me. Not in an asshole way, but if it's my podcast and it's my microphone and it's my channel and it's my graphics and it's my description and it's my voice, no, you absolutely have to deal with me. And I can choose whether to placate you or to tell you or to belittle you or to be a dry moron that conveys nothing. These are all my choices. And I'm just choosing this is who I choose to be. And if you don't like me, great. I have such a fun time because how podcasts come out, because I talk like this on all the podcasts. And I remember telling somebody that back when I was a copywriter in a marketing company, back in the day, kind of COVID era, I'm just feeling my way out like 5-6 years ago. Can't believe it was that long ago, like 29. And I'm like, man, you have to write at an 8th to 10th grade level. Anything that you write in copywriting, 8th to 10th grade level, you got to dumb it down. You got to do this. And I said this George Carlin quote on the show. I said, look, there's a George Carlin quote out there, because the host, me and they were going back and forth. Think about how dumb the average guy is walking down the street. Now, remember, 50% of people are dumber than that guy. So, right. So when you do marketing, you have to encapsulate. There's not much. I like niche marketing, but you do have to encapsulate. Not everybody reads on a college level. Not everybody does that. So most of the afternoon, I've been arguing with this guy in the comments of that clip that somebody posted from 6 months ago of you have to do this. But once again, it's my quote, it's my voice, it's my expertise, and that's what I'm going to do. We're going to talk about it, and I am not going to waver from being the expert. I can be wrong. I can be retrained. I can be retaught. I can have new information, but I'm not ever going to not be an expert if I've put thousands of hours into something.
Yeah. And the 8th grade level, it's very real. Having just finished my book, I was like looking through and obviously getting all the tips on like how to, the best books. Cause I don't want to just have the title of bestseller. Like I have that, but I want it to actually sell, and I want people to actually implement what is in the book. And I was reading, I was like, oh, it's got to be written in an 8th grade level. And I was looking at some of my copy. And, sometimes I have some smarty pantsness coming through. So looking at it, and thanks to ChatGPT, I was, how would you write this at an 8th grade? When I looked at it, I was like, okay, that's not bad, but it's still my words. But there are certain pieces of it where I'm like, yeah, that was too elaborate for the reading level that I want it to be at, so that it's actually implemented.
Yeah. You when you give information as an expert, when you say, hey, you need to do this to do it, you have to do it in a way people can follow it. There's a reason if you go to YouTube, some YouTube channels that, and I love YouTube for learning tech things and learning new processes and products and all that. They're people I follow because they talk to me in a way that I absorb, right? I'm not saying that I'm dumb or I'm smart or they're smart. They speak to me in a way that I absorb. And if you sit here and go, well, I'm not like the guy in the comment, I'm not dumbing it down for anybody. I'm not asking you to dumb your shit down. I'm not asking you to go, so did you take the podcast? I'm not asking you to do that, right? I'm not asking you to talk to the dude like he's got a 4 IQ. What I'm asking you to do is make what you say absorbable to the person you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use a lot of $13 words that person has to stop, think about, stop whatever, then decide you're just a douchebag. But stop, think about, stop. They're not learning what you're saying. They're not absorbing what you're saying. They're not flowing into that communication conversation. So that's what the 9th, 10th grade level thing is about. Not because you're dumb, because that's what's easily digestible. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you eat an idea? One bite at a time. So if you give too big of bites or you give too big of stuff, it's not digestible and people walk away, and you're not teaching anybody anything. You're just hearing yourself talk to hear yourself talk, which a ton of people love.
So go back to the ego.
Yes.
Ryan, I have loved our conversation, as I love every conversation with you, because they're always so uncensored. Like they're
Yes.
so beautifully unfiltered. And I so deeply respect that about you, because you tell it like it is, or at least how it is for you.
Right.
And you honor that truth for you. And I think how beautiful this world could be if we honored and respected other people, even if we disagree with them.
Right. And that's a amazing thing. I love arguing, right? I love exchange of information. I love getting proven wrong. I love proving people wrong, all of those things. I think that's how it works, right? In a respectful manner. I'm going to say this, and there's maybe people in your comments that go, that guy's a dick. And I'm going to be, yes, I am, but show me on the doll where I was wrong. And then that is going to start a whole nother conversation, right?
Why will it?
Yeah, right. Because then at that point, it will be like, okay, well, I don't feel, okay, good. Educate me how you would do it, because I would love a different perspective. I know what works for me. I go to that well because it works for me, right? What I don't want to do is go to a well that doesn't work for me. So I don't think everybody's inherently wrong. I don't think you're wrong because you believe different from me. Maybe we just have different wells, and let me see what's in your well, because maybe that works for me. But until then, I'm not going to be searching for wells everywhere. I'm going to do what I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan, how can we find you? How can we work with you? How do we get you behind and your hands all over our podcast?
Well, the best way is Ryan at Titan Media Works. Just reach out to me directly. And that's WORX. If you do the K, I think it's a mail stripper site. And I'm not even kidding. So it's, yeah, go check it out. But eventually come back to our website. But yeah, or just whatever. But yeah, reach out to me directly. Like literally just send me an email and say, hey, I heard you on the Communication Podcast. Let's talk, right? The other way, the two biggest one, because I'm a Gen Xer, is Facebook. I sent you all my links. That'll be linked in there. Facebook, Instagram. I mean, you can reach me there. Maybe 6 months before I message you back, you can reach me there. LinkedIn is another big way. I think everybody that does business podcasts are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the quickest way if we're doing a business exchange or whatever. If you go to Facebook, you're going to see some business. You're going to see my local stuff. You're going to see a lot of pictures of me and my wife. You're going to see memes that I like. So maybe because you were talking about that.
You Gen Xers and the memes.
Gen Xers and the memes, man. Gen Xers and the memes. But that's really the best way to do it. You can go to titanmediaworks.com, which will give you a pretty good overview. We're in the middle of revamping that a little bit, but I'll give you a pretty good overview of what we do and how we do it. And you can communicate with me through there. When it comes to a podcast, all consultations are free. I love sitting down and talking about it. And if I intimidate you, don't. This meeting will be just like this interview. And we'll see if it's a fit or if it's a not. There's times where I'm like, look, I'm not interested in doing your podcast. Or you're not ready to do what we want to do, or to do whatever. I don't mind any. I love taking that journey, and I want, as an artist at heart, because I do some of that stuff too, to take an idea and to see it as something physical that works, whether it be for business, whether art, pleasure, whatever. It's just a passion of mine, and I want to make sure, because your success is my success when we do this. So let's just get together and talk about it.
Let's make it awesome. Ryan,
Right.
I have loved our conversation. And y'all, if you want to get a really top-notch quality podcast that looks good, sounds good, and also delivers profitable results, go over and have a chat with Ryan. As always, my fellow communication queens, let your voice be heard.
Queen, if what you just heard stirred something in you, if you are imagining how your voice, your story, your genius could be positioned with the same clarity and magnetism, then it's time. Book your visibility consultation with me today. I will guide you personally through a 7-step communication queen strategy, personalized connections to podcasts that need your voice, and an implementation plan that makes you unignorable. But this isn't for everyone. It's for the visionary who is ready to be seen. If that is you, click the link in the description to book your visibility consultation now.
Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. For more tips on guest podcasting, storytelling, and communication strategies, follow us on social media at Communication Queens Agency and visit us at communicationqueens.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And in the meantime, remember, your story has the power to save one life. Let your story and your voice be heard.